You did not arrive here by accident. There comes a precise moment when life stops happening to you and begins happening from you. And that moment is now. Perhaps you've spent years feeling that something was always missing. Not because you didn't try, you did. Not because you didn't want, you wanted deeply. But because no matter how hard you pushed, reality always seemed one step ahead, slipping away just as you reached for it. Tonight, that pattern ends. Not because you're about to learn another technique, not because you'll repeat affirmations or wait for signs, but because before this journey is over, you will recognize something that has always been true and once seen can never be unseen. There is a silent place within you where nothing is uncertain, a place where there is no effort, no waiting, no anxiety, only knowing. And when that knowing awakens, reality rearranges itself. But before we go there, let me ask you something that doesn't require an answer out loud. When was the last time, even for a second, you felt that what you desire was already yours? Hold that feeling. That is the doorway. Because everything that transforms a life never begins in the world, it begins in a state. Neville Goddard called it assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Helene Hadsell lived it so completely that she won thousands of contests, without struggle, without competing, without negotiating with probability. She never tried to win, she won, not because the world favored her, but because she never occupied the position of someone waiting. Most people live inside an invisible state called almost there, almost ready, almost deserving. Helene never lived there. She lived in the end. And that is why her story isn't about luck, or positive thinking, or fleeting motivation. It is about identity. Because the world does not respond to what you want, it responds to what you are, even when you've never said it out loud. Life is profoundly obedient. It follows silent instructions. Every sustained feeling, every repeated inner image, every private conversation you have with yourself is a command. And the most powerful command of all is not "I want," it is "this already is." Maybe as you hear this, something inside you is resisting. Not because it's untrue, but because it's too simple for a mind trained in struggle. The mind has been conditioned to believe that everything requires time, effort, external validation. But consciousness creates first and only then allows the world to catch up. Helene understood this early, not intellectually, not as a theory, but as an inner posture. When she saw a contest, she didn't think, "What if I win?" She felt, "This is mine." And here is the part that changes everything. That statement was not hope, it was position. She didn't imagine to convince the world. She imagined because it was already true for her. And when something is true for you, the world has no choice. Let this land deeply. Nothing comes to you through force. Everything comes through alignment. Alignment between who you feel yourself to be and what you allow to exist. Perhaps you've spent your life trying to align the world to your desires, when the only adjustment ever needed was internal. Helene didn't wake up asking, "What do I need to do to win today?" She woke up as someone who wins, and that changes everything. Because the state always comes before the event. Always. You never receive something and then feel worthy. You feel worthy first, and then you receive. That is the true order of creation. And now, right here, at this exact point in the journey, a quiet choice is being offered to you. Not a dramatic one, not something you need to announce, just an intimate decision. Do you keep trying? Or do you begin assuming? If that question touched something inside you, make a small symbolic gesture. In the comments, write just one short phrase, not for me, but for yourself. I assume. Nothing more. 2 words, 1 state. Because when you write that, you are not commenting on a video. You are marking an internal transition. and consciousness records it. Now stay with me, because from this point forward we are no longer talking about wanting, we are talking about inhabiting. There is a vast difference between desiring a future and living from an already decided end. And this is where most people lose momentum. They imagine, but still wait. They affirm, but still check. They believe, but keep a backup plan. Helene had no backup plan, because a backup plan is simply doubt wearing polite language. When you truly decide, all other possibilities collapse. And that is not limitation, that is power. In the next part of this journey, you will discover the exact moment Helene shifted identity, the ordinary day when she stopped being a housewife waiting on life and became someone reality responded to. And when you recognize that moment, you may realize something both unsettling and freeing. You were always one decision away, not from more effort, not from more time, but from a state you haven't fully occupied yet. Take a breath, because we are only beginning, and what comes next is not inspiration, it is activation. No thunder, no sudden miracle, no sign in the sky. It looked like an ordinary moment, and that is what made it so powerful. She was not searching for proof. She was not asking the universe for permission. She was not hoping this time would be different. She simply encountered an opportunity, and instead of wondering if it could be hers, she decided that it already was. That decision did not happen in her words. It happened in her being. Most people think transformation comes from action, but action only follows identity. The real shift happens when you stop asking, "Can this happen for me?" and start living from the quiet certainty, "This is already part of my life." Helene did not feel excited in a frantic way. She felt calm, grounded, certain. That calm is important, because excitement can come from desire, but calm only comes from knowing, and knowing is the language reality obeys. Neville Goddard taught that imagination is not fantasy, it is the workshop of creation. But imagination only works when it is entered as fact, not as wish. Helene understood this instinctively. When she imagined, she did not imagine getting the prize. She imagined having already received it. The relief, the satisfaction, the quiet smile of someone who knows there is nothing left to prove. This is what Neville meant by living in the end. Not visualizing a future, but remembering an outcome as if it already happened. And here is where most people go wrong. They imagine from the state of wanting. Helene imagined from the state of possession. That difference is everything. Wanting keeps you aware of absence. Possession dissolves absence completely. When Helene closed her eyes, she didn't see herself hoping. She saw herself after the win. And then she let it go. Not because she didn't care, but because there was nothing left to do. This is where trust is born. Not trust in the universe, not trust in luck, but trust in identity. She trusted who she had decided to be, and the world responded. When the result came, and it did not shock her. It confirmed her. And confirmation is dangerous in the best possible way, because once you experience reality responding to assumption, you can never return to powerlessness. Helene didn't stop at one win. She didn't call it coincidence. She didn't retreat back into doubt. She repeated the process again and again and again. Each time with less effort, each time with more naturalness, until winning was no longer an event, it was a pattern. And patterns come from states. This is where her life quietly diverged from the lives of most people. While others waited for permission, she assumed authority. While others tried to improve circumstances, she changed position. While others hoped reality would be kind, she knew it was obedient. And now, listen carefully, because this is where this becomes personal. The same law that moved through her life is moving through yours right now. Not later, not someday, now. You are always assuming something, even when you think you are neutral, You assume what is possible. You assume how long things take. You assume what kind of person you are, and the world simply agrees. The question is not whether you are assuming, the question is what. This is why Helene's method works so cleanly. She didn't assume sometimes, she assumed deliberately. She selected an end, she entered it internally, she lived from it quietly, and she allowed life to catch up. No forcing, no chasing, no checking, just coherence. And coherence is magnetic. At this point in the journey, something subtle may be happening inside you. A recognition, not excitement, not hype, but clarity. The clarity that says, I see where I've been standing. And that awareness alone is already a shift. Now let me speak to you directly without metaphor. If you are tired of trying, this path was made for you. If you are tired of waiting, this understanding ends that cycle. Because assumption is not effort, it is placement. You place yourself internally where you wish to be externally, and then you stay there. That is all. And this is where I want to invite you very naturally, without breaking this flow. If you feel ready to stop visiting the state of your desire and actually live there, there is a 21-day challenge available in the description and pinned comment below. Not as a program to fix you, but as a structured space to stabilize a new identity. You don't need it, but it can support the decision you're already making. Now return with me, because the most misunderstood part of this teaching is not imagining, it is waiting without checking. And that is what we are about to enter next. Because the moment you stop checking, you stop confessing doubt. And when doubt disappears, manifestation accelerates. In the next part of this journey, you will discover why patience is not passive, why true confidence is silent, and why the moment you stop watching the clock, life starts moving faster than ever before. Stay here, because the next shift is the one that separates those who understand this intellectually from those who live it. There is a moment in conscious creation that separates understanding from embodiment. It is not when you imagine, it is not when you decide, it is not even when you feel certain, it is when you stop checking. Most people never reach this point, not because they lack faith, but because they misunderstand confidence. They think confidence is loud. They think it reassures itself. They think it needs constant confirmation. But true confidence is silent. Helene Hadsell understood this deeply. After she assumed an outcome internally, she did not watch the calendar. She did not replay the scene obsessively. She did not scan the world for evidence. She lived. And that is far more radical than it sounds, because checking is not neutral. Checking is a confession. Each time you check, you are saying to life, I'm not sure yet. Each time you look for proof, you quietly affirm that proof is missing. Helene refused to do that, not out of discipline, but out of identity. Someone who already has does not monitor arrival. Someone who knows does not ask when. This is what Neville meant when he said, signs follow, they do not precede. The moment you look for signs, you reverse the order. You place the world in charge instead of consciousness. Helene never gave the world that authority. She understood something most never realize. Waiting is not about time, it is about position. You can wait anxiously for years and remain in lack, or you can wait calmly for days while already living in fulfillment. The outer duration is irrelevant. The inner state decides everything. Helene waited the way a winner waits, not tense, not hopeful, but settled. She had already experienced the outcome internally. There was nothing left to anticipate. And here is the paradox. The less she cared about when, the faster it came. Because urgency repels, but certainty attracts. Urgency says, I need this to happen. Certainty says, it's already done. Life responds differently to each. Urgency creates friction, certainty creates flow, and flow feels effortless. This is why Helene appeared lucky to others. They saw results without struggle and assumed chance was involved. But luck is simply alignment misunderstood. She wasn't lucky, she was coherent. Her inner world and outer expectation were in perfect agreement, and reality had no resistance to offer. Now listen closely. At this stage of the journey, many people sabotage themselves unintentionally. They decide, they imagine, they even feel peace, and then they talk about it. They explain it. They seek validation. They invite opinions. Helene almost never did this. She protected the state the way one protects something sacred, not because others were wrong, but because noise dissolves assumption. Every opinion you absorb becomes a suggestion, and not all suggestions serve your end. This is why silence is powerful, not as secrecy, but as stability. When you don't talk about what you're becoming, you don't dilute it. Helene understood that the moment something is decided internally, it begins organizing itself externally. And interference, even well-meaning, slows that organization. She didn't need encouragement, she had conviction, and conviction is self-sustaining. This brings us to a truth that may feel uncomfortable at first. You don't need to believe harder. You need to stop contradicting yourself. Most resistance doesn't come from doubt, it comes from mixed signals. You imagine one thing but speak another. You feel certainty, then joke about failure. You assume success, then emotionally prepare for disappointment. Helene did none of this. She was clean internally. One direction, one state, one identity. And identity is the strongest force there is. Because reality doesn't respond to thoughts. It responds to self-concept. Who you believe you are determines what feels natural to receive. Winning felt natural to her. Receiving felt normal. Not because she was special, but because she occupied the state consistently. Now pause for a moment. Not physically, internally. Ask yourself quietly, what state have I been living from? Not what you want, not what you affirm, but what feels normal. Because life delivers what feels normal. If struggle feels normal, you will keep proving resilience. If waiting feels normal, you will keep encountering delays. But when fulfillment feels normal, life adjusts. And this is where patience transforms. Patience is not endurance, it is peace. It is the absence of internal movement. Helene was patient because there was nothing unresolved inside her. Resolution came first. This is the order Neville taught. This is the order Helene lived. And it is the order that works. Now something important is happening here. If you are still listening, it means something in you is already shifting. Because the mind cannot hold attention this long without resonance. Something in you recognizes this, and that recognition is not new, it is remembered. You are not learning power, you are reclaiming it. In the next part of this journey, we are going to move into the final shift. The moment you stop trying to change reality and realize it has always been waiting for you to change states. And when that happens, you don't chase outcomes anymore. You collect them, effortlessly, naturally. As someone for whom this is normal, stay here, because what comes next is where identity locks in. And once it does, there is no going back. There is a quiet moment when effort falls away. Not because you gave up, but because you finally understood. This is the moment Helene Hadsell reached again and again, the moment when creation no longer felt like a process, but like a consequence. Because when the state is occupied fully, outcomes are no longer pursued, they are collected. Helene did not manifest in the way most people imagine. She did not strain reality into compliance. She did not wrestle with circumstances. She simply walked forward as someone whose life already made sense. and life followed. This is the great misunderstanding of conscious creation. People believe they must do more when the truth is they must be more precise. Not louder, not more emotional, not more hopeful, more consistent. The world does not respond to intensity, it responds to stability. A fire flares and dies, but the sun holds. Helene held. She held the state without drama, without urgency, without explanation. And because she held it, the world rearranged quietly. This is why when the prize arrived, it never felt like a miracle. It felt like confirmation, and confirmation changes a person forever. Because after confirmation, you no longer ask, "Can I do this?" You ask, "What shall I choose next?" This is the turning point, the moment when life stops being reactive and becomes selectable. Helene selected outcomes the way others selected groceries, calmly, clearly, without emotional turbulence. And here is the most important realization of all. The moment you stop trying is the moment creation accelerates. Trying implies separation. Trying implies distance. Trying implies not yet. But when you assume there is no distance, only unfolding. This is why Neville said, "Assumption, though false, if persisted in, will harden into fact." Not because assumption is magic, but because assumption is identity, and identity is destiny. Now let me say something plainly, without poetry. You do not need to fix your life. You do not need to fight your past. You do not need to heal everything before receiving. You need only to decide who you are now. Because the present identity rewrites the past automatically and reorganizes the future effortlessly. Helene did not analyze her limitations. She did not revisit childhood wounds. She did not question worthiness. She chose. And choice is final when it is not negotiated internally. Most people delay their lives because they keep their identity open-ended. I'm becoming. I'm working on. I'm trying to. Helene closed the case. I am. And life responded immediately. Now pause again, gently. Feel into this question. If there were no consequences, who would you be right now? Not what would you do, not what would you have. Who would you be? That version of you is not imaginary. It is simply unoccupied. And states do not require permission. They require entry. You enter a state the same way you enter a room, by deciding you are inside it. And once inside, everything looks different. From that state, choices change. Reactions soften. Opportunities recognize you, because reality recognizes state the way a mirror recognizes form. Helene lived in a state of inevitability, not arrogance, not entitlement, inevitability. What was hers could not miss her, and what was not did not interest her. This clarity removed resistance. She was not pulled in many directions. She was not emotionally scattered. She was centered. And centered people are powerful. This is why conscious creation is not about controlling life. It is about becoming coherent enough that life cooperates naturally. Now here is the final revelation, the one hinted at the beginning of this journey. There is no moment when your desire becomes possible. There is only the moment you stop contradicting it. That is all. No alignment ritual, no cosmic timing, no external approval, just inner consistency. And when consistency is reached, the world responds with precision. This is why Helene could win again and again, not because she repeated steps, but because she maintained a state. Steps can be copied, states must be inhabited. And now you are standing at the same threshold, not between success and failure, but between effort and ease, between hoping and knowing, between trying and collecting. Nothing more is required of you tonight. No promise, no vow, no declaration, just this quiet recognition. I no longer chase outcomes. I allow them to arrive. Let that settle. And as it does, you may feel something unfamiliar. Not excitement, not urgency, but calm. That calm is not emptiness, it is alignment, and alignment is power in its purest form. Now, as this journey reaches its final breath, understand this. If you feel drawn to remain in this frequency, not as entertainment, but as reinforcement, you may choose to stay connected to this channel. Not as a subscriber to content, but as someone who continues to align with this way of seeing, this way of being. There is no pressure, only resonance. And resonance always knows what to do. Because once you understand this, once you feel it in your bones, you never go back to trying. You move forward as someone for whom things work, naturally, quietly, inevitably. And from this state, life has no choice but to agree.